It's 6:30. Okay, welcome everybody. I'm going to call to order the meeting. This is a public hearing of the Upton Zoning Board of Appeals. We are continuing the public hearing for the comprehensive permit for 47 Main Street, aka 0 Main Street. And tonight's focus is the traffic and stormwater. And we're trying to stay on those topics. We also want to be very aware that we have to close the public hearing, I believe, I just checked, May 15th. So we are going to try to stay on track. If you do, as I always do, I open it up to the public for comments. I'm going to add a cravat. You're going to, when we go up, you're going to have to go up to the mic and speak and give your name, and because the recorder was unable to record some people that had stayed in the back. So to get it into the record more appropriately, if you wish to make a comment, it has to be up here. And again, if you are looking to say whatever you said the last time or the time before, that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for new information or questions specific to the information that is getting presented tonight. Okay? All right. I think we're going to start off. You folks, your traffic person has a timeline tonight, so why don't you get started off on the traffic report. For those who are interested, these reports have already been posted to the website. When this does have the update to Fisk Ave. So if you're interested in reading it in its entirety, it's in the website. Thank you, sir.
Yep. So I believe both the towns and our traffic engineer are both virtually tonight. They've gone back and forth. The last peer review letter had minimal kind of things to change, so we were feeling pretty good about the Fisk Ave study that was done. And I believe you're the town's engineer can confirm that. I'm not a traffic engineer, so I'm going to turn it over to them. And
okay, just for the camera's sake, I'm going to hold you to the same standard as everyone else. Yep. Name and who you are.
David Pine, project manager for Kevin Lopeser.
Thank you very much. Can we cue your traffic engineer, Mike? Is that possible, or is that
yeah? Jeff, are you on?
I am, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm going to try to turn my camera on here in a minute. Okay, well, it's, so yeah, I don't want to hold you up on anything, but so for the record, Mr. Chairman, Jeffrey Durkin and Associates with the transportation consultants for the project, and I had presented at the last public hearing. So just by way of an update, I think David did a good job of at least summarizing as to where we are. So we did have the opportunity to provide a response to the peer review comment letter from Stantec. The primary focus of that letter was dealing with the adding the Fisk Avenue intersection into our study area. As you recall, that location to be approximate to the school was important in terms of looking at how the project might impact that intersection, particularly during the school peak hours. So we worked with the town planner to come up with a date, an appropriate date to go out and collect some traffic volume data at that intersection. So we did do that. We collected traffic volume data on January 10th of this year while schools were in regular session. Sunny day, favorable weather. We also performed some field observations, and one of the things that we had noticed, there's a police detail officer out there, as I'm sure the board's aware, and I think a lot of the residents that live on that street are aware as well, that there were complaints from the fire department that verified, I think, all of the comments that we had heard at the previous hearing with vehicles being queued up on 140, restricting the width of the traveled way. So since that time, at the request of the fire department, the police department actually is out there during pickup and drop-off time periods and holds the vehicles and then has them enter the school parking lot. So that what that does is it actually improves the traffic flow, but more importantly, it frees up Route 140 and Fisk Avenue for emergency vehicle travel. So as we undertook these new traffic counts and performed those observations, we are reflecting those conditions. So our analysis indicates that the project had a limited impact on operating conditions at the 140 Fisk Avenue intersection, and that limited impact being minimal delays in vehicle queuing as it relates to that time period. The other thing that we undertook, and this was done, I think, just after the last public hearing, there was some question about the trip generation for the project. So one of the things we did was provide a summary graph that looked at the trips associated with the project over a 24-hour basis and showed in illustration the curves that I had mentioned, where we have peaking of traffic happening during the morning and evening peak periods. So we did provide a graphical illustration of that hopefully would provide a little bit more clarity on how we estimate the trips and the time of day during which those trips occurred. The other thing I would mention as it relates to that graph is that we also were able to look at the school peak periods. So you were able to see, when the peak period is happening for school pickup and drop-off periods, how much traffic the project is generating during those time periods, and it's actually less than what is being generated during the commuter peak hours. But we did provide that as a data point as well. More so that what we could show is that we did, in terms of analyzing the roadway peak periods, that the school peak period would be less impactful as it relates to the project than the peak periods of the commuters on there, just to provide some context as well. The last thing that we looked at from the standpoint of request from the peer reviewer dealt with sightlines and safety at the driveway to the project site. So one of the things that was requested was that we provide a site triangle plan for the project site driveway intersection. So we did provide that, which illustrates the sight lines looking to the left or right as you're exiting the project site. And it demonstrated that we do have clear sight lines far in excess of what's required for the actual speed of traffic approaching the intersection, just to verify that. The other thing that we did with respect to sight lines is not only looked at it in plan view, but also in vertical view as well. And I think we had discussed at the last hearing that section of Route 140 is relatively flat and straight, and so there isn't any vertical impediments to the sight line. So we provided photographic evidence of that as well. So that's a part of your record and shown in the site plan. And not to belabor that discussion, but having it shown on the site plan and including it as a part of the site plan set is important because as the zoning enforcement officer or the building inspector, if they ever need to go out there and make sure that there's no sight line impediments, that plan allows them to see where those site triangles are, and just to make sure as they're out there looking at it, nothing's placed in those areas. So that's also assists with that as well. So that's a high-level overview of the new information that was provided. The peer reviewer was able to review that information before the meeting, and you should have a letter in your record that, from their standpoint, it closes out all of the items that they had asked us to look at as a part of the project. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have now, Mr. Chairman, or later on in the meeting.
Okay, thank you. I think probably before we open it to the board, is Evan online tonight? He's the traffic engineer.
Evan's there.
I am, yes.
Evan.
Sorry I couldn't be there in person.
That's all right. Well, so we're going to kind of lean on your expertise here. So, Evan, if you could introduce yourself and your role and give a summary of what you think of the current transportation plan.
Sure. My name is Evan Drew. I'm a traffic engineer with Stantec, who has been reviewing the submittals based in traffic for the project route. So I think Jeff lays out the project perfectly in regards to where we started and where we're headed. The items that were reviewed most recently was VAI's updated traffic impact assessment, updated January 26th, VAI's response to traffic impact assessment peer review letter, January 26th, as well as DNL Design Group's response to traffic impact assessment, peer review letter dated February 2nd. So these were the response letters to our comments, as well as the revisions created by VAI, addressing any of what we found previously were some minor comments, as well as adding that additional information regarding Fisk Avenue, and also outstanding information for the Mass DOT project that is destined for Route 140. That one is project number 60, where was it? I forgot the number, but the project that's doing Main Street. They took a look at those, and we essentially were able to check the boxes. So we had minor comments initially, and they addressed those. So some of those minor comments were, as was mentioned before, not so minor, I guess, but the site triangle inclusion, just to verify that we have site distance to the driveway, as well as as was described in the last public hearing that we talked about traffic regarding citizens' concerns on impacts to school traffic and their follow-up study of Fisk Avenue, which was already planned on beforehand. So most of our comments were awaiting the results of that. And from our review, everything seemed applicable. The impact based on the new traffic derived from the new housing was expected to be, I won't say not impactful, but did not necessarily depreciate the queues and the delays that you would see on the neighboring intersections. The one highlight, though, is the Route 140 intersection more downtown, but that's kind of covered by the Mass DOT project anyway. It kind of has I don't know, kind of a horrible existing condition that really isn't exasperated by the project. So we do have additional comments, but so the one minor comment is actually more of just a labeling error. Within Figure 1, Fisk Avenue was named Fisk Avenue North 19. It kind of comes from Google Maps, so we just asked for that to be corrected for the record, but it was no quantitative issues for the remainder of the project. So we concurred with all the other findings within VAI's traffic impact study. Now, the part that is not on VAI's list, but was part of the DNL Design Group's plans, we had requested DNL Design Group to provide the proper signing and pavement markings for the driveway as it approaches Main Street. They did provide that. They provided a stop sign and a supplemental stop line. And we corresponded that to VAI's site distance triangle, so those should match up rather well. Again, as Jeff had mentioned earlier, when an inspector or during construction goes out there to verify that those are still met, it should be clear that both the site plans and the study match up. We had some questions regarding the initially proposed crosswalk of the driveway along that north side of Main Street. It was confusing about what was the existing crosswalk, what was proposed in the project. The team did revise that and submit that with this most recent submittal. But we saw that on plan sheet C 3.0 and C 4.0, which identified the sidewalks and the proposed crosswalk at the intersection, we were a bit perplexed as to the intent of I would say the northwest corner of that intersection. It appeared as if the sidewalk that was coming alongside the driveway was then tipped down to roadway level, in which it would then enter the state highway layout, Main Street, before you would then have to take a 90-degree turn to go up the tip-down ramp, or the left, you're already on road grade and go across the crosswalk. At least that's how the most recent plans appeared. So within our comment review letter, we had this one outstanding comment that pointed to Mass DOT's engineering directive E12 005 dated March of 2012, and also drawing E107.6.4R of MassDOT's construction standards to point to how that situation can be handled in sidewalks and a crosswalk at a T intersection like that. That was our recommendation, to review that and revise the way the driveway tees into Main Street and how the sidewalks and the crosswalk are handled at that location. That was our remaining comment. Again, that goes through the design plans. The VAI traffic impact assessment, we just had a recommendation to revise some locals on a figure, and shouldn't hold up. That shouldn't hold up the project. It's just for clarity for the final product.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to the board to let them ask whatever questions they have in just a second here. But I'm going to get ahead of myself and say, I know next time, I think we're going to be talking with the fire department. They had some concerns about the road going in, whether it was too curvy. We're not really discussing that tonight, Evan, but if at all possible, I don't know whether it would be you or David could look at that for our next discussion, so that you guys are prepared to tell us whether that is too curvy or it's okay. It's just something, it's going to come up next month, and I'd rather be prepared on this side and let everyone know that we just want to know, is that going to be okay for the trucks to get in? Public safety is paramount.
Absolutely. I can let Dave maybe speak to who would address that. Typically, if that was a comment from especially the fire department, to support that, we would ask truck turning templates. They can map out that, essentially the fire department's largest vehicle, and map it along the driveway and potentially some of the access points to some of the hydrants or other fire apparatus within the site.
Okay, so just for your team and for ours, know that that's coming down the road. We're going to want some answers. I'm going to open it up to the board, because I don't really have any questions myself. I read the reports.
Yeah, I do.
Go for it.
So my concern is Fisk and Route 140, as far as getting the school buses getting across there, because there's approximately 13 school buses take 2 trips a day going across there, and I just know myself trying to go across 140 and being able to see the sight line. I looked at the report, and it looks like the numbers they came up with are from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. and then 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Those really don't sync up with when the school buses will be coming across. And then, I look on the counts here, it just doesn't seem particularly accurate that, coming across Fisk Avenue, going up to take a left into the school, it says like 5, and I don't know what that 5 represents. I just have a big concern with that intersection and the school buses and the amount of traffic that goes through there.
Do you want Evans?
So is this I'm sorry, this is Jeffrey Dirk from Vanessa Associates. Is that on the 5 that you're mentioning, was that on a specific figure? Because I'm just looking through my notes now.
Yeah, it's on page 8, figure 3. And, the number is what it is, but it's just, I just want to make sure we're representing the amount of traffic, particularly school buses, that are going across 140 right then, and twice a day.
So the morning, the figure that depicts the morning volume, so that's 7 to 8 in the morning, so that should coincide somewhat to what school-related traffic would be during that time period. I think that the area that's not showing for necessarily school-related traffic will be the evening time period, which is the 4 to 5 p.m. in the evening, which then during that time period, which is the peak of the roadway, there's probably little to no school-related traffic during that time period. What I had mentioned is that the morning time period does capture school-related traffic and how our project impacts that time period. The project's traffic during the afternoon time period, that would coincide with the school pickup and drop-offs, is much less than occurs during the weekday evening peak hour. So the impacts of the project as it relates to those existing conditions, however they may be, is going to be pretty small because we're not adding a lot of traffic to that intersection during that time period. So I would suggest the impacts, even with the school traffic, would be, as it relates to the project, will be the same or less than what would be experienced during the evening time period, even though the volumes will be a little bit different.
Yeah, that's a concern I have. I thank you for explaining it.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. Any crossing movement of that intersection is going to be difficult to do. So I think that's what you're referring to.
Yeah.
If you're trying to cross from one side of 142 clear, it's going to be difficult, particularly during the evening. I think during most of the time of the day.
Right.
But that crossing movement is always going to be difficult. I think the important thing as it relates to the crossing movement is the safety, and I think that's what you're saying. It's not about delays, it's about the safety of that movement.
Correct.
We did look at the crash history at that intersection, and there's the number of crashes that are happening is not disproportionate to the volume of traffic going through the intersection. It's not a high crash location, and there isn't any sight line issues as it relates to that location. So I think as we're looking at it, there's delays, but there's not a large number of crashes, and the sight lines aren't impeded. The only other thing I would add is that there is the benefit of the police detail officer that was out there. We weren't aware of that, and we were, the fact that the residents brought it up as an issue had us go out there and observe what was happening, led us to be able to actually have a conversation with the police detail officer who was out there. And in our conversations with them were that, at least as it relates to safety, is that the intersection operates much better and certainly safer by having the detail officer out there. So I think, as a result of some of the concerns of the residents as well as the fire department, there have been some safety improvements done just by virtue of having the police safety officer out there.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments on the board? And I agree with you, safety is, water, I was saying one, but I should say safety is. Any other questions, guys? Okay, now, folks, I usually don't open it up at the middle of the meeting for questions or concerns, but I know the two traffic engineers have to sign off relatively early tonight. If you have specific questions for Jeffrey, or Evan, I would invite you up to come to the podium and give your specific questions, but please make sure if you do want to come up, you state your name and address so that Amy can get you. Anyone want to have a specific question or concern? Come on up, sir. But make sure you state your name, please. This is on traffic. We're going to open it up at the end for regular stuff, but this is specifically for Evan and Jeff. Thank you.
Hi there, James Meyer, 35 Fisk Avenue. I was in cooperation with the board member here asking about that one intersection. I live on Fisk Avenue, so two young kids, and safety is a concern for me. So the other thing, outside of the hours that you already brought up, which school buses don't happen 7 to 8 a.m. for the elementary school. It's an 8 a.m. and on forward period, so the morning was incorrect. I noticed that the traffic detail that you did was on January 10th for this particular day. And for folks on the board that are concerned about water, you may remember that was a 4-inch rain day. I had a flight that was canceled that morning. I had a train in New York City that was delayed for 4 hours that morning. I have to imagine the traffic was severely reduced. I sat here a month ago and said, if there's a snow day in January, we're going to postpone the traffic delay. And the builder actually chuckled and didn't look me in the face and said, of course we're going to delay the snow if there's snow. I feel a little bit hurt as a person there that didn't delay that 4-inch. That was pretty severe rain. So I wanted that taken into consideration. That I think the traffic was probably much less on that day. And then my other comment I wanted to make, maybe a question, if I'm looking at figure 3 versus figure 8, that's sort of the delta that I'm seeing as current traffic versus projected traffic in 2031 if the project is to occur. And if I'm looking at that same intersection, the same figures that the board member was just mentioning here, I'm concerned about the right-hand turn from 140 onto Fisk. I see this project as folks using Fisk Avenue as a throughway to get to Hartford, ultimately to 495. So the current existing traffic, again on the rain day, in the morning hours was four cars turning right into Fisk Avenue in the morning, 19 turning right into Fisk Avenue in the evening. And if we're doing this project, which is probably going to have about 100 or 130 cars, they're saying by 2031 in the morning, there will be 4 cars turning right in the morning, and there'll be 20 cars turning right in the evening. So just want to understand, am I reading that correctly, that we're saying 1 more car in 7 years into this project is going to turn right in the evening? It seems a little bit disparate to the number of cars we're going to be adding to the traffic. So, in conclusion, corroboration with the morning. I wanted to give my concern about the rain on that particular day the traffic study was done. And then third, I'd like to understand the difference of current traffic versus planned future traffic. I only saw 1 car difference. So appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, James. Okay.
Hi, Sue Perry, 24 Hazeltine Road. I'd just like to reiterate that fact as well, that the time frame where those 13 buses come out is in between 8:30 and 9:15. And I have seen 2 elderly people in my neighborhood fall on Fisk Ave before the year ended. One of them broke her leg. It's very, very dangerous.
Thank you, Sue.
You're welcome.
I'm done.
Hi, I'm Dick Kennedy, 22 Hazeltine Street. 4 inches of rain turns Fisk Ave into a 1-lane street and makes it incredibly dangerous for everybody. So any volume in those circumstances is worse. And the reason there aren't more crashes crossing 140, because most of the drivers that go through there are very careful. We all know. Any first-time driver that leaves our neighborhood is almost guaranteed to get in an accident going there. So any first-time driver coming back to that development will more than likely have at least close calls going through that intersection.
Thank you very much, Dick. Okay. Jeff or Evan, either of you want to make comments on this?
Well, I can start. This is Jeff. So, a couple things as it relates to this. So the 4 inches of rain, I get it, but 4 inches of rain over the course of the day is not something where it's necessarily going to impact our peak period traffic counts. Okay, so I want to make that very clear. The other thing I want to make very clear is that we perform a lot of traffic studies for schools, and I think everybody understands that the worst case condition for parents driving their kids to school is when it's snowing or raining. When we design schools, we are not able to accommodate the parent pickup and drop-offs that happen during inclement weather. So as it relates to school traffic at that intersection, it's actually worse when it snows or rains and school is in session. It was important to us that as we were looking at what was described by the neighbors as excessive queuing out on the roadway that impacts public safety, that actually the rain condition is a worst case condition for us to observe it. That's number one. Number two is, I think as Evan had mentioned, we actually performed some traffic counts prior to or consistent with the last public hearing that we were at. Those traffic counts, as it relates to traffic on Fisk Avenue, it may seem like the volumes are low as you look at our traffic counts. I will tell you that the traffic counts that we've done, we've actually performed counts on 3 different days. They're almost exactly the same. Snow day, rain day, favorable weather day. The fact of the matter is that what you see for existing traffic volumes going up and down that roadway is consistent with what we've measured in December and we've measured in January. And not only that, it's been verified with a detail officer that was out there. I understand the difficulty of using that road, and I understand the difficulty of the crossing movements that are happening. But what we've represented in the traffic study is consistent with what we found on multiple times that we've done the traffic counts there and verified those with the detail officer that was out there as well. Again, that's not taking away from what has been expressed in terms of the volume of traffic as it relates to the residents using that road who live along that roadway. the conditions of how difficult it is to get in and out of the street. That's going to be there independent of the project. Our assignment of traffic to that intersection is based on the existing use of that roadway, so how people are using it today, and looking at the quickest travel route from the project site to get to employment centers, and we've looked at both of those. Use of Fisk Avenue to avoid specific roadways sends people around in a loop. You end up at the same point. If you use Fisk Avenue, go up, and you turn left or right, you end up at the same point as if you stayed on 140 and traveled to other intersections to try to arrive at the same point to get to 495 or to come from 495. We did assign a portion of the traffic to Fisk Avenue, even though the volume and the distribution would not suggest that a resident of this project would use this roadway. We wanted to see what the impacts of the project would be. So it is correct. We assigned 1 or 2 vehicles to that roadway out of the percentage. And again, we're talking about a project that produces 18 trips in the morning and 27 trips in the evening. So we assigned 2 trips to that roadway, which is, looking at about 10% of the traffic that's associated with the project, which is it's reasonable for us to look at in terms of impacts. But reality is that that's kind of what the level of impact would be from the project during those time periods. And again, what that showed is you did not have an increase in vehicle queuing or motorist delays that caused a change over existing conditions at that intersection. I would suggest that even if we put 5 cars, and again, 5 out of 18 or 5 out of 27, which is a large percentage of the traffic, especially since some of that is entering and some is exiting, you're going to arrive at the same conclusion. So I think we've looked at it a bunch of different ways. And Evan's had a chance to review that, and I think he can look at it and say the sensitivity of if you assign more traffic, what would happen as it relates to the impact of the project. I think the conclusion is you end up at the same place, that the project's not going to impact the conditions over what's there today. But again, that does not take away from the fact that it is difficult to make a movement exiting from this avenue, especially for the crossing movement. So I'll let Evan opine as well.
I think you brought up some good points there. I don't really have anything much more to add other than I think as much as there's they're not trying to downplay some of the existing issues people are speaking about to the intersection. It's the impact they have to the intersection as it relates to the amount of traffic they're actually adding, as Jeff kind of mentioned. They did review the available crash data, that MassDOT produces. There was 1 crash. I forget if it was property damage only. It doesn't take away from the number of close calls that go unreported. Safety is, any traffic engineer's top priority, and it's well worth to continue to keep tabs on that. As of the hours for the school versus the hours for their study, VAI did review based on typical traffic standards of the peak of the traffic of the adjacent roadway. So while they looked at when the volumes were very high on 140, it did not necessarily correlate to the potential increased traffic on Fisk Ave, but lower traffic in comparison to other times of the day to Main Street. That's kind of my only things to add. I think what Jeff brought up too about sensitivity, that was not necessarily assigned to them to look at sensitivity. It is sometimes practiced to see what is your thresholds there, but based on the traffic that they are producing, I think it would take a much greater development to warrant throwing a lot more volumes to see how long it takes to break the intersection in some of these metrics that we use. Again, as Jeff has been saying, I don't want to downplay safety or potential safety concerns either. It is part of our practice to review existing crashes, but it is the state of Massachusetts is trying to come up with ways to review crashes before they happen, such as the roadway width, the speeds, all these things to try to predict the crashes before they happen and to not wait for a major crash to happen in order to do something. Based on the information that VAI brought from MassDOT about what the intent for that Main Street project is to come down, we're hopeful that some of those things will be addressed. I don't have it in front of me. I don't know if they found if there's an actual firm timeline of when this will happen. So again, I think I would say it would be great for the town and the people who are here at this meeting to keep tabs on any public hearings that come for that project and to voice a lot of these concerns as well. We're voicing them here. It'd be great to voice them as well in that public setting in order to let the state hear that and provide potential improvements to that intersection as well. But again, the amount of traffic generated from this project, it's really hard to justify, I guess, throwing more what ifs as to the turning movements or other time periods to potentially get a different answer. So that's kind of where I'm adding to that discussion.
Well, one positive that has come out of this, and I don't know who directed or whether the chief came up with it on his own, is to get a police officer out there in the morning. Having had worked at an elementary school for 34 years, I will say that bad weather does make more parents want to drop their kids off. I saw that myself. I used to do the bus duty.
School was postponed that morning, though. School was postponed that morning. Sorry, I'm talking out of turn now.
Yeah. He has specifically asked me to make sure that he knows who is speaking. So he did not catch that was James on Fisk Ave speaking with the question that school, or a comment that school was postponed. But sir, I'm going to ask, a public meeting can get can get very chaotic if people just yell out, okay? So I'm going to strict. Now, we're not going to fill up any gloves with water and cut them today. Do you have a question or a comment on traffic specific? Now, before we get into, remember, this is the pre-existing condition. Okay? We want to think about, how is this project going to change that? Is it going to add to it, subtract to it? What's it going to do? So, make your comment brief, because we still have to get to stormwater tonight.
Understand.
Okay.
One comment around the
Who are you,
heavy rain.
ma'am?
I'm sorry, Marsha Kasalowski, 10 Whitney Lane. This is regarding the heavy rains on the day the study was done. And if you look at the population, there's a lot of people now that work from home during bad weather. So when we have bad weather predicted, like inches of rain, people work from home. One thing that happens on Fisk Avenue is this. You have the two intersections, School and Hartford Ave. When they back up, Waves redirects people up Fisk Avenue. So if it's good weather, there's a lot of people on the road. We see a lot more traffic on Fisk than we would during a rainstorm or during bad weather. Just a comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff, I wish you guys had thrown the data in on other days too. You said 3 days total, I believe.
Yeah, we can provide the other data that we have. The concern we had with providing that data was what we had heard at the last public hearing from the residents about the fact that there was road work, and the road work was impacting the traffic volume, so we didn't even bother submitting it.
Okay.
Because we didn't know if it was subject to that. So that's why we went back out and, made sure we did some coordination with the planner to gather some additional data. But we can certainly provide that data as well. It's not significantly different from what we collected in January.
Okay, thank you. All right, we gotta I'm gonna keep this meeting moving because May 15th is gonna come a lot faster than people might know. Everyone knows a very high priority on me and my concern is stormwater. I think before I take this presumption, board members, do you have any more questions for Evan or Jeff? Okay, and thank you for those who made comments. We listened to them, James, Sue, Dick, and Marcia. I want to go on to the stormwater. I think probably, I think the same format with you guys presenting your stuff. Now, for those who don't know, and actually the notes are in, they're on the public website. There was an engineering peer-to-peer meeting, which we had actually encouraged. It's where their engineers meet with our engineers and try to, we do the heavy stuff. I do have a couple specific questions, but the actual, all the stormwater stuff is on the public website. But if you want to get up there, give your side, or I shouldn't say your side, the information that you want to share, we'll have Dave, I'm assuming David? Dave, okay, I wrote David, sorry.
No problem.
We'll also have Dave from Stantec make his comments. Thank you.
Okay, good evening. My name's Peter Lavoie. I work with D&L Design Group, and I'm the civil engineer for the project. So since the last meeting, like the chairman had said, we had met with Stantec at the town hall and went through my original drainage report, and then we also made 2 revisions to that through Stantec's review. We also talked on the phone a couple times, so we have talked between the 2 of us a lot. So we looked at a 6.75 acre parcel on Main Street, which everyone knows the location. So the parcel we looked at, it slopes from Whitney Lane down to School Street and also to Main Street. So when you take the original parcel and you look at that, you come up with some interest points, which would be Main Street and School Street. Those are the 2 at the lowest point. So through the Stantec review and the meeting, we looked closer at the Main Street side of the project. And in that, pre-existing conditions, can you go to the next sheet? Sorry. So, not the second sheet, yeah, sorry. Okay, so this is my pre-existing plan. So this shows you that there are 3 drainage areas on the plan. Middle one is E1, which flows towards 45 Main Street, and that's at interest point number 1. So basically you take the overall parcel and you look at the topography and determine where your interest points are. Interest points are where surface water will concentrate and go to that location. So like I said, drainage area 1 is in the middle and it goes to 45 Main Street. So that was 1 interest point. Drainage area 2 is the lower area that goes out towards School Street in the wetlands in that location. And then because of our meeting with Stantec, we looked at drainage area 1 and we subdivided it into another drainage area, which concentrated at that existing culvert, that existing 18-inch culvert that goes under Main Street. So we basically took that drainage area and went and looked at it closer because we knew that was a concern, was that the culvert. So you take those 3 things, you take those 3 drainage areas, you come up with numbers, and then you compare that to the post-development, which is, can you do the next sheet? Okay, so this is my post-development. So you take the same overall drainage area, and now you have your post conditions. So you add catch basins, and you direct the water to certain areas, and then you're comparing the same interest points. So in the post-development, you have 7 drainage areas. So you can see the 7 drainage areas here. But you still have the same 3 interest points. So basically what we did is we took the proposed driveway and parking lot and brought it down to 1 basin. Then we took another portion of the drainage area on one side of the building, and took it to drain, the detention basin number 2. And then the building went into the underground basin there. And then we also concentrated on interest point 3, which was a concern, which we're not increasing any runoff there. So basically, by comparing those two conditions, your pre and your post, we came up with our numbers and we determined that we're not increasing any rate and any volume to any of those interest points. Through the review of Stantec, we adjusted our numbers regarding, because of the soil classification and infiltration rate, we had to make changes to that. But the overall, for the pre and post developments, there are no increase in rate and volume to those 3 interest points. Also, by following stormwater management, we have to treat the water, we have to meet the required recharge, which is basically, once you put pavement down, you have to infiltrate that amount of impervious area into the ground. So we've addressed all those concerns through stormwater and through Stantec's review. Also, other changes that were made from the original design, all the detention basins now provide a 4-foot groundwater separation. So basically that means that the bottom of my basin is 4 feet above groundwater. So that was a big change. Another change was part of stormwater management, you're required to treat 80% of all runoff, all impervious area. You have to treat that before you can infiltrate that into the ground. So stormwater management requires you to treat 80% of that runoff. Our design treats, you take each interest point or each basin and you have to account for that treatment. And we've treated 85 to 92%, so we're above the requirement. Another thing that we looked at is, once the runoff leaves the basins, you try to minimize erosion before it gets into the wetland. So we've created little settling ponds and level spreaders. So basically, the larger basin will empty into a settling pond with a level spreader, and it will create like a sheet flow, because you want to kind of spread out the discharge. You don't want it concentrated. So we've added all level spreaders for each of the ponds that we are proposing. We had to revise our calculations for drawdown. We have to make sure that the basin will be empty within 72 hours. That's a requirement through stormwater. And we have done that, and we've adjusted our infiltration rates per Stantec's review comment letter. Basically, that's basically the design. You follow stormwater management, and then also we took the recommendations of Stantec's reviews into account, and the concerns of the neighbors, and we went a little extra to make sure that we don't increase any rate or volume. And volume is the big portion, because so all our basins are larger because we have to hold the water longer, because we're trying to keep the volume from leaving. So
I remember, and maybe Dave will help, but there was one where you're basically recharging the underground one, and there was some concerns of the amount of space before the water table. Did that concern get taken care of?
yes, we
Okay.
provided
Thank you.
cross-sections of each basin.
Yes.
So we did a cross-section of each basin that shows where groundwater is, where the
Yeah.
existing grade is, and then where the bottom of the basin is with respect to that groundwater. So we
It's
had-
just something that caught my eye, just wanted to make
Yep.
sure it got taken care of. Okay, excellent. Questions of the board before we have, or do you guys want to have Dave go first for Stantec? Open it up to Dave then? You guys okay with that? Okay, Dave? And thank you guys for getting together and working things out, because it's nice that a concern comes up and it's already worked out before the next meeting. That's nice to hear.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dave Glenn from Stantec. I'm a civil design engineer for Stantec, and we've done a peer review of the stormwater management system for the project. Just to give you a little update, we did provide an initial letter back on December 15, 2023. We went over those comments at the last ZBA meeting we had back a month or so ago. After that meeting, as Peter mentioned, we did meet with the applicant and the consulting engineer, reviewed our comments, over discussion on some clarity on some of our comments. Revised set of drawings, plans, drainage calculations was submitted back to the board and to ourselves for review. We did provide a second peer review letter to the board dated February 16th. Based on that second letter, we still had a few additional comments to the applicant's engineer. I can go over some of those comments if you'd like.
They're the ones that's in the letter that's in here, right?
Right.
Yeah. And were those concerns addressed as well?
Well, this letter was the 16th. We sent it out. Consultant engineer did provide additional comments. We received them today.
Yeah, I saw that.
So we haven't had a chance to review the latest submission by the consultant engineer. There were a few items in our February 16th letter that still had to be addressed. Based on first review of what they submitted, they're saying that they've addressed remaining comments from the February 16th letter, but we have not had a chance to review those, that latest submission.
Okay. What were the, hold this up, the 16th letter. What were your major concerns on the rebuttal to, not the rebuttal, the response to the second rendition?
To February 16th
Yeah.
letter? Yeah, I can go over some of those.
Just
high points.
the things that you're most concerned about, and let's make sure that those get taken care of.
Yep.
I did see that something came out today, but I was driving today, so I didn't have to read it. I was on the road from me.
I mean, our February 16th letter, we had a few additional comments on what was submitted back in January. We were looking for some additional information on the sizing of the riprap stone at the outfalls themselves. Based on the velocity, there should be a certain size stone to be provided so there's no erosion at the outfalls. We were looking for some more information on that. We did make a comment that the stormwater basins 1, 2, and 3, and a segment of the access drive is located within a 30-foot no disturb area that the Conservation Commission has, and it's our understanding that will be discussed with the Conservation Commission when they file the NOI. We did ask for some additional calculations on the closed system. They did provide the calculations for the closed system, but then we asked that they take another look at some of the rainfall intensity that they had used in those calculations. This latest response that we got today, they said they've addressed that, but again, we haven't reviewed those updated calculations today for the closed system. So that's still outstanding. On the basins themselves, we had a comment again on the drawdown. Again, as Peter had said, the infiltration basins, they should empty out within a 72-hour period. So when you do that calculations, it's based on the soil type that's in the ground. The value they had used, we questioned that value that was used. And again, based on what they submitted today, they said they updated the calculations for that drawdown analysis. Again, we haven't reviewed that yet.
Okay. I'm assuming that was from the deep hole test, the value you used?
Yeah, I classified the soil and I went with that classification, but I had to use a smaller number. I was using a B type, like soil comes in A, B, and C.
Yeah.
A is your better soil, C is your glacial till.
Yeah.
I was kind of using the B,
Right.
so I went from a 1.02 to a .27, so my calculations
So should
were
we-
.27, so it's a lot more conservative.
Yeah, very conservative, because depending on where you are out there, there's some really nice glacial till.
Right. So all the basins were recalculated using that .27 infiltration rate.
Now, did you guys do holes over the whole site, or just?
Well, we concentrated on where the detention,
Okay,
where the
smart idea.
basins were.
Okay, all right. So Dave, we're obviously gonna have to wait. I mean, you just got the response today, so we don't expect it immediately. Are there any, and a lot of the comments for those who didn't read it were things like riprap, which is like the size of the stone, so when the water flows out, it doesn't erode. It was, whenever you have like a sewer pipe come close to a water pipe, you have to concrete it, which is a requirement of the town and the state and the DPW. We know you have to work out these small details. Are there any red flags that we need to be worried about right now?
No, I don't anticipate any. I think more of it, some of it was just making edits to the plans, some of it was adjusting some of the calculations, and again, based on the response letter, they said they've made those changes to the calculations, so I don't anticipate any
Okay.
additional issues coming up, but again, we have not reviewed the latest submission.
Okay, all right, well, because we're running out of time, May 15th is coming very soon. If you do have further concerns, can the two of you again do just a touch base and work out those concerns? We'd like to have you to be very comfortable with their design before we move forward, but we only have a couple more meetings to go. Okay, before I open it up to anyone else, any folks on the board here? I want to open it up to you guys for questions, concerns, now that we have Dave and Peter here with us.
I know there are some abutter concerns that I'd just like to hear their questions.
Okay.
Might have follow-up after that.
Yeah, I was going to give Butter, I always give the abutters concerns, because they're legitimate concerns, and I said water is number one. How about you, sir? Any questions for Dave or for Peter?
I do. There's a mention of trees, and there's 6-inch and larger trees. We keep those. Can you provide any insight on that? How that came about, as far as that recommendation?
That was part of the site plan review requirements, that any tree over 6 inches in diameter should be identified on the plan. Then we had a discussion with the board that night, and it was agreed that they would provide the actual limit of disturbance. So the plan now is updated, so they have a line around the actual project area that basically shows a limit of disturbance, so you know what's going to remain natural and what's going to be disturbed. I think it was agreed that we were going to ask them to go out there and size every tree caliber that's greater than 6 or 8 inches. So I guess the middle ground was that the limit of disturbance will be identified on the plan, so we can clearly see what's being disturbed and what's being maintained under existing conditions. So that was updated on the site plan.
Yeah, so I have a concern about the tree selection, as far as what's kept and what isn't, and who's making those decisions. I think the trees is a huge part of this, as far as picking the right ones, to, keep as far as shading for neighbors and stuff. So I just want to know who's going to be involved in the selection of the lot, and doesn't take everything down. Or not just take everything, but take the wrong ones down.
Well, I think the line I saw, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I could be, is they located where they're going to be cutting stuff, because they got to put the road in, the drainage,
Right.
retention ponds and all that. And basically, there's some lines in there of where they're planting more trees.
Right.
But my understanding was we're leaving anything that they can leave that's outside, like there's a whole bunch of wetlands down at the bottom end, but that they're just leaving that alone. And I think last time I talked with one of you gentlemen, you're even going to be putting some trees down in behind the neighbors over on Church Street, School Street, sorry, not Church, School Street?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and we're providing fencing as well, but that won't affect the trees on for the driveway, so to provide more coverage for the neighbors all around the property.
But outside of that line, you're not cutting anything, correct?
No, we want to keep as many trees as possible. You know, we're not touching anything outside that line.
I don't know which map it is.
My recommendation is someone is involved that, I'm sorry, is not a builder or us, who knows, you know, the trees, which ones to keep and which not.
We have a tree warden. The town
Right.
does have a tree warden.
I
Yes,
think it's important.
Yes, yes,
Can
sir.
I comment? So on the plans,
Yeah.
it's, the limit of clearing is indicated in a red line, and that red line will be, is at the limit of grading. So that red line will be staked by a professional surveyor at the time of clearing. So what will happen is, the surveyor will go out there and stake that red line, because that's the limit of grading. So up to that point, we have to grade. So everything up to that staked line would have to be cleared. And then everything on the other side, you know, will be saved or will remain. And then along that line, in front of that limit of clearing, we have plantings that are going to be proposed.
So who comes up with the plantings as far as who picks which plantings?
Well, we have a landscape architect that's on our team that had determined what type of plant. He goes out, he looks at the vegetation, and then he comes up with a planting schedule that's on the landscaping plan.
So someone like that for the existing trees would be good, as far as saying, yeah, I think this is a good one or not a good one to take down. I mean, based on the condition also too.
Right,
Yeah.
I mean, I just think that the trees that are gonna be taken down are gonna be, if you're on that side of the limit of clearing, or if you're on this side of the limit of clearing. I don't think they're gonna go out there and say, oh, we're gonna keep that tree. If that falls within the limit of clearing, it has to come down. But anything on the opposite side would be preserved.
Okay.
Is it, I'm assuming this is J-016 final plan set? That's the red, I'm seeing the red line in there.
Correct, it is on, it's on the site plan, and it's also on the
Yeah,
landscaping
yeah,
plan.
yeah, that's the
So
one.
you can see the red wavy line?
Yeah, that's what I
That
thought
is
it
the
was.
limit of clearing.
That's what I thought.
So what we do is we put points on that, and then we stake that line. Yep, that's the limit of clearing.
There's been discussions with neighbors though regarding
Right, so
trees.
you see the fence, and then you have that, there's gonna be plantings within there too. So we met with the neighbors, and the neighbors wanted the plantings, or the new plantings, on their side of the fence. So if you look at the landscaping plan, you'll see plantings along the back of that fence, between the fence and the limit of clearing.
Right. And is that an agreement between Lovaser and?
That's what,
Yeah, it's on the plans right now, so, you know, if the plans are approved, that's what we plan on doing, so.
So the decision will be very clear to say that anything on that side of the red line won't be cut down, and that it will incorporate their landscaping plan, and they have to follow through as part of the condition. Any violation of a landscaping plan would be essentially a zoning violation.
Okay.
Well, I'm just glad that your team and Kevin met with the neighbors. I think that was absolutely critical, that you guys had some opportunities and the neighbors had some. You can't shake your head, no, I know we did.
He didn't meet with all of them.
Well, they're public meet, I mean,
Yeah.
you know. You come here tonight, and I thank you for doing that. Kevin's not here tonight, the rest of his team is. I have seen some discussions out in the foyer afterwards with some of the team members, and I know Kevin's not here, but please take advantage of the time to talk with these gentlemen. Some of the neighbors down on School Street, I know had a chance to talk with some of them and bring them over and point out their specific concerns, and I know that some of the plantings that are planned are as a direct result of the neighbors' input, and I think that's valuable. So please, this is why we have public hearing, this is why we have the opportunity for everyone to get together and have these discussions. And I think that we want to continue that. If you can take time to grab, I think in this particular area, it's probably Peter that would know the most on it. And pigeonhole him on it, you're certainly welcome to do that. And I would also, I know that he's met with some neighbors, you know, ask them to let Kevin get a hold of you, and maybe you can arrange another meeting. By the way, this is sometimes a little bit unique. Sometimes there's no such thing legally as a friendly 40B. It doesn't exist legally. But there are sometimes developers come in and they don't care about anything from anyone, and they know what the rules are, and they do the absolute minimum. So I'm glad that this team is at least taking time to meet with a lot of neighbors. Speaking of that gentleman, there is some training being offered later in the some in March and some in June. If you are interested in going to that, I personally want to learn. Eric's been educating me on special permits a little bit more than variances, and so my invitation goes out again, that if you want to go to the training, I'll join you, and I'll even pay for lunch. So, and I think the training is going to be covered by the town. So it's a smart idea to...
And they provide lunch, so you're safe.
Oh, I'm safe. I was just going to provide it anyways. It's good to, sharpen your edge to know the rules, and I think it's valuable. And say I have some real good questions. Eric's got me thinking here on stuff. All right. Anyways, Dave, anything else you think that's important that you add here for as limited as you can be with the response just coming in today?
No, I think the majority of our comments have been addressed. I think there's just a few items that we need to look at. I don't anticipate it take us quite a long time to do it. I think we can turn it around within a week or so. I don't anticipate it being long on that.
Okay. Excellent. Gentlemen, any more questions? Because I would like the community and the neighbors to have an opportunity to speak. Okay. Dave, why don't you have a seat? And you want to be first? Okay, we'll let this gentleman, and then I make sure that everyone gets a chance to speak every time.
Hello, everybody. Kevin McLaughlin, 52 Main Street. I want to thank the board, the developer, and everybody else that's taken the time to hear my concerns regarding this project. I'd specifically like to thank Michael Antonellis, Joseph Leiden, and Brett Seamus of the Select Chair, who were kind enough to come down to my property and see the situation. So with that, here we go. Both the chair of the ZBA and the developer have stated publicly and privately it is illegal for a project like this to increase the volume of water heading onto an abutter's property by even 1 gallon. I have also been assured the independent consulting firm retained by the town will check and double check all of the paperwork to make sure this does not happen. I've read Stantec's recommendations regarding the adjacent culvert, but was a little disappointed when they did not acknowledge the catch basin on the north side of Route 140. It actually feeds that culvert and handles all the runoff from the approach that is currently being proposed. I believe it's going to handle the runoff from the sidewalks as well. It was again overlooked and not included by Stantec. Basically, all the impervious road below catch basin 1 and catch basin 2, I'm going to guess at like 600 square feet or so of impervious ground, not including sheet or surface water, will drain into the catch basin on the north side of Route 140. From there, it will end up directly unmitigated and untreated onto my property. This is a complex issue. I believe it is important to highlight a couple facts about the catch basins and culverts on both sides, on both the north and south side of Route 140. They are not operating in the capacity they were designed to. There is no drainage easement granted to the state or anyone else on the south side of 140. That is my property. No drainage easement. Curiously enough, there is a drainage easement granted to the state for the north side. That may go a long way to back my claims up. The site of the funeral home, the site the funeral home now sits on, was all cattails. It was filled up and pushed into the culvert and buried. The development of the funeral home in Hazeltine and Whitney has forced all the water towards the north side culvert. The stream has been covered up and basically buried, so the water is flowing underground. The catch basin and culverts were not designed to handle all the water that has been forced their way. If they were meant to work together, they would have been built in line with each other. The culvert on the north side is roughly 12 to 16 feet away from where the culvert on the south side, which is my side, is installed. On my property, there is water flowing out of the dilapidated culvert on the south side. This has created one stream. Curiously enough, there's a second stream flowing that daylights on my property, probably 15 to 20 feet lower in elevation, about 200 feet south, directly in line with the north culvert. My point is these culverts and catch basins were not designed to handle the water being pushed through them. One was designed for the runoff on the north side, and one was designed to handle the runoff on the south side of Route 140. That's it. The culverts that have been referenced here, I believe the gentleman said they were 18-inch culverts. That is not true. They are 16-inch culverts. Now to the drainage maps and corresponding HydroCAD files. Could you pull up that, just the drainage map that I highlighted, some of the elevations, please?
Almost there. Here we go.
Not that one, not that one, a little bit lower. Okay, can you just turn this sideways just so the people can see it? A couple more times. Okay, so the area that I'm talking about, I actually added the catch basin right at the base of the road. You guys were kind enough to acknowledge the head wall, but nobody acknowledged the catch basin that was feeding it. This area right here is below catch basin 1 and catch basin 2. All of this water is going to go into this culvert and directly across the street into my property. Along with the, I don't know if the sidewalks are included. Could you guys know if the sidewalks were included in the 24-foot? Because I know you're gonna have those nice handicap sidewalks where all the water's gonna run. The sidewalks aren't? Okay. Well, I took the liberty of adding the catch basin there myself because nobody else would. If you could go just down one to the HydroCAD documents. Well, before you do that, sorry. Before you do that, if you could just look at the elevations here. Up a little higher. Up a little higher. Can you go to the left a little bit more? Okay, so we have catch basin 3 and catch basin 4 listed at an elevation of 336 feet. So then if we could go back down to the bottom, please.
Over here, or the next
No, just right there, perfect. Now we have 330 feet, which seems to be placed in the center of the center of Route 140. There's at least a 6-inch drop from here to there. If you could go to the HydroCAD documents, please. Now, I'm not an engineer. This is like a best guess. So if I'm totally off here, you guys, can certainly let me know. But nope, a little bit higher up. There you go. So this appears to be the HydroCAD document for the area that I'm concerned about. Now, you have the high point at 335 feet, which, I mean, the catch basins are at 336. They're not going to, that foot of run is not going to drain backwards into them. And you have the low point at 331 feet. Now, I believe that the catch basin is 6 inches lower than the 330 feet that you guys have detailed on this document. And if you plugged in 336 and 329, I'm sure the numbers would look a lot different. Now, getting back to, that's basically my issue with the HydroCAD. The elevation 330, hold on, let me just get to where, anyway, the culvert, seeing how all this water is going to end up on my property anyway, I believe that the culvert on my property should be included in a hydrological study. That's where all the water from the approach and the sidewalks will be heading anyway. The culvert on the south side is more than 10 feet in elevation lower from where the new water will be entering, so entering the catch basin. So I believe we're going to need a 500-year study to have an accurate projection. All of these omissions and inconsistencies have made me feel as if this is what they're going to do with the paperwork, imagine what they're going to do with a shovel. I found out after
Kevin, do me a favor, okay? I haven't yelled at anybody. whole time. You're just getting louder and angrier, okay? I'm listening to your concern.
Okay.
But please just do it in a little more civil tone.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I'm just not used to speaking in front of people.
No, I think it's just because you have the microphone right up against.
Oh, that might have been it. I'm not angry. I'm good. I found out that after Pleasant Street, the water goes into a pipe for over 1,100 feet and to the bottom of Station Street. Over 500 feet of underground pipe after daylight, I believe, helps my case. I believe if nothing can be done to stop the water flow, 300 feet of underground pipe should be installed from the south side of Route 140 to the north side of Pleasant Street. My previous neighbor at 60 Main Street had their head wall removed and a pipe installed back in the 90s. So what I am asking for is not uncommon to the neighborhood. I don't believe it is unreasonable either. The developer is putting a sewer pipe and a gas pipe directly through a wetland. Why can't I get one through my property to handle the additional water flow? There is no drainage easement on my property or my neighbors on Pleasant Street. So this water should not be there in the first place. I would like a special order of conditions placed on the permit that allows me to lease the land required for the pipe and drainage and not one more inch to the builder with the expressed intent of using it and maintaining it for underground drainage. Secondly, I would like the reclamation of my property to be able to do as I wish. For the record, I have confirmed everything I am saying in a Teams meeting with 8 engineers from MassDOT last week, 2/16. Some of you may recognize their names: Ann Sullivan, Timothy Dexter, Hanan Fuller, Lawrence Cash, Ross Gooddale, Jonathan Freeman, Jessica Leone, and Daryl Gallion. I have a meeting on my property with MassDOT engineers before the end of the month to assess the current situation and the conditions moving forward. They would not be coming to my property for no reason. I want what's fair. The whole premise of this project is equity and inclusion. Why should me and my neighbor lose equity and not be included? Thank you.
Kevin, thank you. Would you be upset if I came along? Because I'm concerned. What did I say at the beginning of this? Water's my concern. I was going to say it has been number one concern, but the safety has been up there too. Would you be upset if I joined you in that meeting?
No, I believe I asked you to come to my property a couple of times. I asked for the BOS, I asked for the Concom. That's why I thanked the gentleman at the beginning of the meeting, because they were kind enough to come to my property. You're more than welcome anytime.
I would love to. And I'm literally right down the street.
Sure.
I can walk to your property in like 5 minutes.
Okay. Please don't mistake my lack of public speaking in candor for anger,
Okay.
because I don't do this a lot, you know.
Okay, that's fine. All right, well, thank you. When's the meeting? 'Cause I'll attend. I've tried to attend. No problem.
I'll shoot you an email.
Shoot me an email.
Yeah, it's February 28th.
And it's make sure I'm not watching my granddaughter. Because I literally am right up the street almost every day. What the heck is cold?
What time of day is your meeting on the 28th?
Kevin.
Kevin, what time of day is the meeting?
I'm going to have to check. I don't really remember off the top of my head. It's either... I can send you guys an email. I certainly will.
Send us an email, because, you know, I know we're not changing.
Do you want me, I can explain some of the...
Yeah, and I know no more water's gonna come off. And I know like currently when you walk down into the property, it dips from the road, it goes down. Well, it depends on how far up you are on 140. It dips down and goes back up. Is there a culvert at the lowest spot, right at the entrance, to catch the water that he's concerned about?
Could you please, as you asked all of us, have unlooked at the microphone?
Sure, yeah.
I'm very impaired. I think a lot of people...
Okay.
may be also.
Sorry about that, sir.
Thank you.
Is the road gonna go in flat, or is it gonna be a dip down then up, or is it gonna go
No,
up?
the
right up?
road is gonna come in flat and then go up at a 5% slope.
Okay.
The driveway.
So will the water from the driveway going up the slope, is there gonna be a catch basin at the bottom to catch anything coming out?
There are 2 catch basins, like Kevin said, catch basin 1 and catch basin 2.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are 2 existing catch basins on Route 140. The problem is that the catch basins were there, but they were wiped out with a text mask, but it's a drafting thing. But I can, so the last two catch basins are roughly, I want to say 30 feet from the end of, so the last two catch basins and then the roadway is approximately 30 feet, roughly. But those two catch basins 1 and 2, go into a storm scepter and then discharge into that channel.
That's not my
So-
concern.
I know that's not, I know,
Right, but
I
I
understand. And then the other two catch basins, like he referenced, the 336 down to the 330.
Yeah.
So the other two catch basins, 3 and 4, go into that small little detention pond, number 3, which is right there. And then the HydroCAD that Kevin showed on the screen describes that little basin. So the little basin, the bottom of that basin is at 331, and the top of that basin is at 335. It has nothing to do with
Okay.
the grade on the road.
So the grade on the road.
No, that's fine, that's fine, I understand.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to call that up, I can kind of explain.
It's technical stuff, and thank God we got Dave here too, and you can lean on him. My question is simple, water coming down the drive,
Yeah,
you grabbing it?
I am.
Okay.
And then, so what I did is,
There's less drainage area going to that culvert than on the existing condition.
So there's less water going to that culvert than there currently is under this plan.
Based on that survey we see and the mapping they provide.
All right, because that's what I want to hear, and this is why we hired this guy. He's a professional, and he's here to double check him.
I mean, this is.
But I'm going to come to your thing anyways.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Why wasn't the culvert on 140 included in any of the studies, and why did, you're saying the catch basins are gonna be 30 feet up the street. So that's the last point of collection that you have. So from 30 feet up the street on both sides, all that water's gonna run down to Route 140.
it's only a 24, it's a 24-foot by 30-foot area that goes to that existing catch basin. So what I did is, my interest point is that culvert. So
It's
that
not-
catch basin and the road go to that culvert. So that is my interest point.
Right, but I don't understand how you could cut a road and put a non-porous surface, a hard surface. 30 feet up is where your last two collection points are coming down the hill. And all the rest of the water is gonna run down the hill. It's gonna end up in the catch basin on Route 140. It's not, it has to go somewhere.
We have two catch basins right there.
No, below them.
Yeah, but it's only a small little area. It's only,
It's still gonna produce runoff.
but I'm taking into account on the opposite side of that culvert, I reduced the size of that drainage area that's getting to that culvert. So the original, in the existing conditions, Stantec had us do a survey of that swale in the wetland. If you look at the wetland, there's a small man-made swale that comes down to that culvert, that 18-inch culvert. So in the existing conditions, the drainage area for that culvert was 20,000 square feet. So 20,000 square feet of area was getting to that existing 18-inch culvert. We reduced that drainage area down to 8,200 square feet. So we basically went more than half. So by reducing that and taking that and pushing it towards the wetland in the middle, then we decreased the area that was going to that culvert underneath.
I'm not sure we're talking about the same thing. Can I just point out to this?
Yeah.
See you, please. So, this area right here at the approach, so you have catch basin 1, catch basin 2. This area at the approach is 24 by, what'd you say, 30?
I would say around 30.
So we'll say about 600 square feet. So we have 600 square feet of road. There's no catch basin detail here. That is all going to drain onto 140.
It goes, yeah, but it goes to that existing catch basin,
Right.
which goes into that
That
existing.
ends up on my property.
But that's where the runoff was going anyways, because,
But you understand you were taking what was once a sponge and you're putting a road there.
but I reduced the drainage area from 20,000 square feet to 8,200 square feet.
I'm gonna stop here for just a minute, Kevin.
I just don't understand.
I understand what he's saying, and I think it'd be easier if you and I have it just go out there. And,
Yeah, I'd love
and
you
do
to
it.
come by and
And
take a look.
you know what? can you catch me afterwards and let's exchange phone numbers so I can give you
Sure.
all that? It's just, I'm a see it guy.
Yeah.
And it, basically it's saying right now that catch basin is grabbing a 22,000 square foot area, collecting it through a swale and dumping it into a culvert that goes to your property. He's taking that 22,000 square foot area, reducing it down to 8. So that means 14,000 square feet are no longer going to go to your property. So you're reducing that by 14,000 square feet. Yes, there's going to be 600 that's going to go to that culvert.
Right.
But you're getting a 14,000 square foot area reduction in what's
Do you
going to your
understand
property.
that water that's up there runs under the culvert? That's why I had 2 streams on my property. So, I mean, it's not fair to not include my property with this drainage study because it's part of the drainage for the property. You can't tell me...
The challenge of it is what exists now.
Right, but you're
This
taking...
is trying to, they have to make it no worse. That's the rule. They have to make it absolutely no worse. You're right on that. He's trying to improve it and send less water to you, and I don't understand.
I'm sure that's what he's looking to do. I understand that. I just, based on the documents that I've seen and the lay of the land and walking out there, and, you know, why wasn't that catch basin included in the documents? None of them. Nobody, you guys never even heard of it before tonight. I mean, don't you find that a little curious?
We look at the site plan for, like this, like when you start going further and further afield, we gotta look at, if you guys all listen to me, what do they say about water? It's my big concern.
I understand that.
When the Stantec Day guy is saying less water is gonna go through your culvert, I look at that as benefiting you.
Well, I agree with you. I don't understand how you can put a road in front of a catch basin and make the volume of water less. You're taking out what is essentially a sponge and you're putting in a hard surface.
The fact that there's a swale there, you know what swales do? Swales mean that at some point, water was coming down there fast enough that they had to put a swale in to direct it.
Where is it? What swale are you speaking about?
The swale that's on the property.
Swale that's on the property?
It's just like a hump in the ground that's a linear line, and it directs the water where you're going to do it.
Maybe you can show me where that is when you come over.
Let's do that. Let's do that. There is someone on Teams out that has a question, and I promise everyone gets a chance to speak. And
John Reed.
What's that?
John Reed.
John Reed, do you have a question?
Yes, this is John. Thank you for the opportunity. 2 comments and questions. I think we all agree at this point that the water issue is one of the biggest issues, if not the biggest issue with this proposed development. I noticed that on the plans, the current property has both conifers and deciduous trees. If you look at an aerial map of the property, taken in the winter, it's pretty easy to distinguish where the conifers are. So happens that the proposed building is where most of the conifers are. So what's the net result of that? The trees that are there drinking water during the winter will disappear. So I believe that is going to have an impact on the water. Secondly, given that we all agree that the water impact of this project is paramount, I appreciate all the work that's been done in the additional studies, but my question is, why would it not be appropriate to do a hydrogeologic survey? I understand this additional cost, but with these rumors of underground streams and so forth, why would we not do that, given the potential impact?
I'll tell you plain and simple.
Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate the tone that you're very appropriate. We're not allowed to put conditions and tests on 40B projects that we don't have for all others. In terms of water flowing underground, one of the meetings, we have something called groundwater. Water does flow underground. I don't know what percentage of the people here in town, most of these people get their water from the town wells, which is water flowing underground, but I happen to get mine from an artesian well, which again is water flowing underground. The developer was specifically stated that he wasn't going to pay for a hydrologic study, which we are not really able to ask him for, because we don't ask anyone else. If anyone in this room wants to come forward and build something, that is not a requirement that the town has. And we're not allowed by the state to put additional requirements for studies. And water does flow underground, absolutely. That happens to be a glacial till under there. It's like a very coarse gray sand. I've got it on my property over on School Street. And it's significant in some outside. So I put a lot of French drains around my building. You can just see the water pouring out the French drain during those heavy big rainstorms. We get 2 4-inch rains, which I don't know if they're 100-year storms, but it's a pretty rare storm. But we are not allowed to ask for a study that we would not ask for anyone else. So I hope that does answer your question. I'm sorry it's not the answer you want to have, but that is the answer.
I appreciate your comments. However, I will reply that I understand what you're saying, and I understand the constraints under which we all work here. But not every situation is the same. So to me, it would seem logical that in a situation where there's a greater degree of probability of impact with water, then a hydrogeological survey might be appropriate. So, another way to say that is if we were looking at another piece of property where it was evident that there was no issue with water, okay, fine, don't do a hydrogeological survey. But here, where the water issue is of great concern and highly suspect, it might be appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. The hard part is people have come with real concerns, and they've come from primarily Hazel, I'm pronouncing it wrong, from the uphill developments. And they're real concerns. And unfortunately, this being downhill from those parcels, I don't think it's going to have any effect on the uphill parcels. I think I'm very concerned about School Street in particular. Some of those houses have already had water issues. I know when the new school got put in. And we were very direct about making sure that this does not increase the water flow off the property. Dave is telling me, the Stantec representative, that the current plan should reduce the water flowing off the property. I don't know, Peter, if there's, people can understand gallons or gallons per minute. I don't know if it's possible your software could generate for Kevin to give him an idea of just how much less water reducing the area by 14,000 square feet is going to be. Because I think if he had a solid number that he's going to know roughly,
Right.
What's going through, it might help him. I don't know if that software could generate that.
To the gentleman's point,
Yep.
the stream's been buried. It's underground, and it daylights on my property. I have 2 streams that are exactly the same amount of space apart as the culvert that's on the north side and the culvert on the south side. The stream has been buried, so how can they accurately measure the water anyway? Without a hydrogeological.
Hydrogeologic survey,
Is there any, is
Guys,
there?
we're beating the same horse.
Well, is there
We have
any-
till May
there's no-
15th.
There's no cause, that there's no way anybody could show cause for that to happen?
If you have water going into the ground, and you have that geologic layer come out of the side of the hill layer on, we call them springs. Or if there's a culvert there, we know it's an obvious culvert.
But if it's been buried, if the water is flowing underneath.
This developer has not buried
The previous
anything.
owner did. He had an interest in the property and he buried. You can come over and see it for yourself.
I'll come over, but we dealt with this last time, or two meetings ago. The hydrologic study is not on the table. Because one, we can't legally ask for it, and two, the developer can legally just say no. And he's already told us he's gonna say no. So we're just wasting your time. Yes, sir.
Two points. Oh, I'm sorry.
Bill, before Craig begins to talk, there was someone in the chat, Dan Lacasse, was sending along messages, and so I was just reminding people in the chat that just raise their hands if they want to be called upon rather than entering in the chat, because when it's in the chat, it doesn't get.
Yeah, I'm looking, for those who don't know, if you want to see, I'm looking at things like whatever maps or whatever documents we're talking about, that's what's up on my screen. I'm not watching the chat.
Yeah. I'm
So
doing
thank
my
you.
best, obviously, to monitor things, but.
Thank you.
Craig, before you go, I'm just going to read his comments real quickly because he asked me to, and then I also asked him to just email me his comments. Dan Lacasse, 6 School Street, said site-specific concerns would be considered valid local concerns related to Kevin's points. The existing water management for School Street side of the property, which we haven't talked about yet tonight, is an open ditch that originates somewhere in the wetlands and runs between 6 and 10 School Street and under School Street. I have previously shared pictures with the board about that being near capacity during recent heavy rains, and that was all.
Okay, well, thank you. Very appropriate comment. And I watched it during that big storm. Holy moly, there was some water moving through there. I mean, it was a running stream. It was not just a little babbling brook. But that School Street's at the base of that big, I mean, it's a good sized hill if you hiked up in there. Anyways, Craig, I apologize that we haven't gotten to you faster.
Oh yeah, no problem. So I had 2 questions, well actually maybe 3, sorry.
Address though.
They're quick though.
No, gotta give Amy your address.
Oh, I'm sorry, Craig Winefuss, 8 Hazeltine Road.
Thank you.
So the first question was, when you, Bill, visit Kevin's property, or actually, I guess Kevin, could you show him the actual stream? Because that's actually on Pleasant Street, so it's like behind Kevin's property. But that is an actual visual representation of what's actually flowing underneath the ground, so that you can visualize where the actual stream, because you can see it physically where it comes out. So I'd just like you to see that, so you're aware.
It goes about 20 feet from my daughter's house on Station Street.
Yes, it goes through Station Street. Yeah, and it's a
Literally.
significant stream, and it flows year round.
Yes, yeah, it's
spring fed, I'm sure.
Yep.
So the other thing, I know the developer is not willing to pay for the hydrogeological study, but I would like to request consideration from the board for the neighbors of Hazeltine to amass the funds to pay for the hydrogeological study, because this is, as you had mentioned, Bill, this is the main area of concern. I would like to request that the board consider that the neighbors amass the amount of money to pay for the hydrogeological study to be performed, and actually pay for the study, because we know that the developer is not willing to pay for it. So that's something I would like the board to consider. The third question is, are we currently discussing the traffic study at all, or is that going to be addressed during another meeting? Can I make a comment on the traffic study, or?
Did you come in late?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
spent almost an hour on it.
Oh, you did? Did the meeting start at 7?
6:30.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was late, I thought it started at 7. Can I make a comment on the traffic study then?
Briefly.
Okay.
But because you've been so polite, you really have.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that. So I was curious about the traffic study and when it would take place. So starting on January 1st to February 8th, I drove from the top of Fisk Ave to the bottom of Fisk Ave, and then across 140, and then I drove the bottom half of Fisk Ave, because as we know, it's two parts. There's the upper part of Fisk Ave, and then there's the lower part of Fisk Ave. So I did this very consistently and disciplined. Every day I would do this, and I would mark it on my calendar. I wrote TS : and I'd put an X when I did that every day. And I can bring in my calendar if you'd like to see the evidence of this. So I drove, as I said, from the top of Fisk Ave to the bottom of Fisk Ave, across 140, and then the bottom of Fisk Ave. And I was looking for the two rubber hoses that you drive over when the traffic study is in place. And as we all know, it makes a very distinctive duh sound when you drive over those hoses. So from January 1st to February 8th, I did this every single day, very disciplinedly. And I never saw the actual rubber hoses across the road. So my question was, how was the traffic study conducted if I never saw the hoses? That's my question.
Jeff, I think that question's for you.
I think,
He's signed off.
yeah, I think traffic studies aren't done by hoses anymore. They're often done by video technology. And no, in Vanessa, I believe they don't use hoses. They use actual video technology to keep track of traffic. But I don't want to speak for the applicant. I'm just saying that that's a possibility.
Okay, yeah, that would be interesting to know, because I thought I saw in the traffic study that they specifically mentioned that they used rubber hoses, but I could be misunderstanding the report.
Through the chair, I could have sworn I remembered to Chris's point. At a previous meeting, I seem to remember Van Ness describing that technique of using videos. But I can easily enough reach out to Jeff to just confirm that.
Yeah.
It might even be stated in the actual report somewhere.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other questions? Yes, sir. You, sir, have been very patient tonight, so thank you.
May I?
Absolutely, sir. Everyone gets a shot. As long as you're civil.
Always will be for you.
Oh, you got to be a nice flannel.
So it's Rick McGuire, 11 Whitney Lane. After one of the meetings here, I think it was one of the first meetings with the zoning board, we did have a chance to talk to Mr. Lobiser. One of the concerns I had was a buffer zone between Whitney Lane and where his access road was. And what happened after that, he did go back, and I thank him for it, and I appreciate it. He did move that road further away from 11 Whitney Lane, so I thank the group for that. Now, the other thing that happened is we invited him to our property, so he spent 2 hours with us in December. It's 20 degrees, very windy. The project manager was there with us, and we talked about some of the issues with the wetlands. And on 51, there is water there. It is flowing. It's part of that graph that Kevin was showing you. But when we talked about it and showed what the issues were, Mr. Lobiser came in and said they're going to put a storm drain on the west side of that driveway and connect it down such it would go to the wading pools. The other thing that we talked about was the water coming off of Whitney. And so he said he was going to put a swale along the property line to take the water that's coming off of Whitney and take it down into one of these holding ponds. Okay. So that was that. The other thing we talked about was the trees. I'm going to bring up trees because that was in the front here. We did talk about that. The neighbor's concern was that fear was they were going to clear cut the whole property. And Mr. Lobiser said, no, we're going in where we have buildings, we will cut that appropriately, but we will do our best to save the other trees. The concern I had was in the buffer area, and that was that he leave a sufficient buffer space to cut down on the noise pollution and the illumination pollution. And so he was going to do his best, because right now there are tall trees there 50 to 70 feet, conifers, hardwoods, to leave that in place. And then the other thing was, he was going to do that, put the swale in, and what we had talked about was some other stuff. He mentioned that he did talk with the neighbor down on School Street, and he's looking for a fence, a privacy fence, and something to mitigate the water flowing through his property during moderate rains. But the point that I want to make is, we did meet yesterday with the Board of Selectmen.
Yep.
And what I'd like to make certain, and Mike Antonellis agreed to help us, I would like to get some of the input that he discussed and the promises he made to the issues we brought up. Kevin's, people on School Street, some of the areas, to get those inputs, try and consolidate them. I mean, I'll work on consolidating with the group here. But I want to make certain we get those inputs and resolutions, if you will, into the team here so that we get everything accounted for.
Right.
I think that will go a long way in helping to resolve some of the agita here in the group.
I think that's actually a smart thing. I think the technical term is order of conditions, and I would agree that that's where that would be the appropriate place for them.
Yeah.
Because you want, Kevin's been good in the past, but not all developers are. Getting them in writing is important.
Yeah. The other thing on the trees, someone came up about the trees. Kevin was going to put those on the inside of the fence along the property line.
Yep.
We talked to him about putting the trees on the outside such that if they grow 2 or 3 years down the road, we're not going to be looking at a 6-foot plastic fence. We're going to see some greenery.
Yep.
And he also said, well, to enhance his property, he will put trees on the inside too. But he did talk about putting in conifers so that they'd be a year-round tree.
So some of the trees are going to get planted on your property line then too?
Well, they're going to be on his property, but on our side of the fence, the Whitney Lane side of the fence.
Okay. So this is in the back part where the road is like cut in a little bit. Yeah, I think I know.
That's Hazeltine, and the fellow with School Street was involved in the conversation with Kevin. Kevin told us about it. He's going to be planting some of those conifers on that side because the apartment building is almost looking into his bedroom window. They're going to put some conifers in there and some other trees. But he's been accommodating. I just want to say one thing. The point that he made with us is he and his development want to be a good neighbor, and we want to make certain we have good relationships with them.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like the fact that you met with him and worked some things through was very helpful.
He spent 2 hours with us, and it was a bitter day. So did the project manager. So we really appreciate it. Pat Hurley and myself in my backyard, and we walked the properties.
Excellent. Well, we've got a copy of the final plan. I don't think we've seen the final landscape plan. I saw one earlier in the plan set that actually I might have it with me that had the plantings, but we'll make sure it gets into the order of conditions. But you're going to have to help Michael and Kevin.
I'd be glad to do it.
Those things put into the order of conditions.
Okay, because I know a number of neighbors have some issues. I mean, just the fact that he's putting that drainage on the west side of the entrance road would ultimately help relieve some of that water flowing into his culvert.
I was just going to add, in addition, it's probably most appropriate to add that as conditions to an order of conditions, but beyond that, if it's okay with the applicant and it's conditions that they've agreed on, I would like to put those conditions as an actual ZBA decision as well.
Sure.
To give a little extra security for the board and for the neighbors.
Okay.
So as long as the applicant's willing to do that.
Yeah, absolutely, through the chair. That was my conversation with Mr. McGuire yesterday, is including that in this zoning board's decision, like Attorney Hoffman just suggested. We also touched on through those comments that the improvements noted would be on the applicant's property. So it's also important to keep in mind that it'd be difficult to put in conditions that extend beyond the limits of this property. So, but if there are improvements that the applicants promised or otherwise, that they should have no problem memorializing that within this decision document.
Okay. Something that's important that we got to think of is in terms of when our meetings are. We're at the end of February, we have March and April, and we have to close the public hearing by May 15th. So we either got to do an early meeting in May, or we got to close the public hearing in 2 more meetings. So we still have the few other concerns. We're trying to keep on schedule, but I just want to make sure everyone's aware of that fact, that there's specific deadlines. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Peter Hart. I live at 11 Pleasant Street. And as Kevin McLaughlin mentioned, he has water going through his property. And that water goes down through my property. It's been going down there through years. And I remember I'm living in the same house as I grew up in. And I remember back when I was probably 6, 7 years old, my father was forced to put a couple sump pumps in because of the water level that has been there all along. So that's the existing situation. And I was pleased to hear, and I probably misunderstood, but the gentleman over here, I think he said that there's been 3 different drainage areas, and one of them, 2 of them are going to go into one. And that would seem to me that if that's the case, there'd be more water coming down our property. Unless, of course, somehow they put it into that particular water that's running off, if they put it into the pipe, the regular pipe that moves it away. What do they call that? Not the pipe that goes under the water to catch the rain, the rainwater there. If it goes into there, it's not as much of a problem. But I went over Kevin McLaughlin's place and went up and looked at the property and went up and looked at the pipe. And I was, okay, there's a pipe, I think he says it's a 16-inch pipe. But I was looking at it, and the water is coming underneath. There was no water going through the pipe. It was coming underneath the pipe. I mean, I go and look at my property now. There's, a pretty decent-sized little creek running there all the time.
Yeah.
And the water, it seems to be coming from 2 places. Not through the pipe. It's coming from underneath the road in one area, and then up by Kevin's property, underneath his property, there's another little stream coming out that way, adding to it. So that's one concern, and obviously the springs underneath the water is probably going to be redirected even more in a way that hasn't been looked at simply because there hasn't been a geological study there, and probably wouldn't be looked at because if there was a study, then that would put the brakes on the whole project. That's
No.
Well, whether it would or not. Also, you mentioned about the water's going to be treated. No, why would it have to be treated? I'm thinking treated water would be something like they do with the drinking water. I don't understand the treating of the water. Is that going to pollute the water coming down through the
Actually,
property?
just no. What it is when you have water coming down like a street, and it's very common on streets. You'll see it now. In fact, if you go you're going up over the hill to South Grafton, where they have the ponds. You'll see there's pond after pond after pond, and they put riprap in there. If you collect water from the street, they often will have trash and stuff like that in it. So what you do is you bring it in, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but you bring it into these settling ponds, and it will basically strip out that trash. So what you're not doing is sending trash down into down to your flowing system. The easiest example for you to see is, it's your road, Bob. What's your name? Williams? If you look at William Street, you drive up William Street, look on the right-hand side as you get up to those condos. That's the sort of treatment that they're talking about. So as the water comes in, you're stripping the trash out, and then you have another one that can get the sediment out. Evan, would you agree with me that I'm saying it correctly?
Yes, I wouldn't say trash, but I would say sediment.
Sediment,
Like
okay.
People, DPW, they sand the roads.
Right.
So that when it rains, first flush it's called, like the first inch,
Yep.
It falls, and then it takes the sand that the DPW had used for, sanding the roads for ice.
Sand?
And then- Yeah, so it gets caught in catch basins, there's a 4-foot sump, and then it goes into a 4-bag.
And
And
if you-
that collects, and then you clean it every year.
Well, I mean, it's more than sand they put on the road, isn't it? That pixie dust they put down all the time, that the salt to keep the.
If you want
And
to,
then that all runs down through the property, that polluted way down past Station Street, I don't think there's any fish down there anymore. I have fish down there.
if you want to see a
That has
place,
nothing to do with you, but I mean, it's not just sand.
yeah, if you want to see a place that doesn't have that, because people like to know actual things they can go look at. Drive up to the swimming area in Grafton,
Yeah.
where the water comes under the street in a culvert and dumps into that pond. There's no way, there's nothing there that cleans that water. That land is making a peninsula out where it's carrying the sediment and the sand and all the stuff that's coming down across that road right into the pond. It's
You're
sticking
talking
out
Silver
about
Lake?
15 feet.
Whereabouts in Grafton?
You know where the swimming Silver Lake.
Silver Lake, okay.
So
And
when
there's a
you,
dam that the water comes over.
so it's on the left hand, it's right next to the street. You can actually see it's like a spit of land growing out into the lake. And that's all the sediment washing down that hill coming through that culvert. So it's just kind of interesting. If you want to see what it really looks like, you can see how it should be on William Street, and you can see how it shouldn't be up at Silver Lake.
So that's what's happening to our property too. I mean, I have to go and every so often, probably even once a year, I have to get there and dig it out to make it low enough. I mean, I've measured the bottom of the property, the bottom of where the water runs now. I just put a stick across it, put, a measuring stick down there.
Yeah.
And I go over to where my land goes over to the, to the wall, okay, where the land hits the concrete. And measure down, the sump pumps are probably a foot or two below what that water level is.
Yeah.
In regular conditions, let alone when it rains and,
Now,
or possible redirected waters and this kind of thing. So, you say it's gonna be better? I hope so. That's great. But what recourse, let's just say the project's over, and all of a sudden, there is more water. Everything's done, everybody's paid, one way or the other, and
Real quick.
what recourse do we have?
Our permitting does not take away any private right that you have as neighbors. If they increase water, you can bring a nuisance claim against them.
I can't hear you.
Our permitting doesn't take away any private right that you have. You could bring a nuisance claim if they increase the water runoff.
So in other words, if you are wrong about the water runoff, all we have is a nuisance claim, that's it? Something that goes along for years and years, because you got the money to do it, and we don't. So you're just gonna wear us out.
Wait, whoa. The goal of this, I said it from the beginning. What's my goal? What's my number one concern, guys? Water.
Honesty, yeah, we're just trying to be honest here.
Right. But
Who's
in
who's
theory,
paying for these studies? That's another question.
they have to pay for them.
And who are they? Who do they work for?
Lobusur.
Okay. Thank you.
But that's why we do. But there's a backup.
That's
This is
all I
why.
have- that's
but
all I have
this-
to say.
Sir.
Thank you.
Sir, this is why we hired Dave, and this is why we hired Stantec, because we got to have someone on our side who's going to check their figures and check them twice. And I respect you guys, but you'll notice, who do I always ask after every time you present? I go to Dave, because he's someone we've hired multiple times.
Real quick.
Very quick, Kevin, but you got to do it at the mic.
Real quick.
But be real quick, because
Nope.
Bill's done buttons.
You guys just mentioned that the stormwater will need to be treated. How, even if there is less stormwater from the approach of the road that's draining onto my property, how in fact will that be treated?
Right, no,
It was just said it all needs to be
from the
treated.
600 square feet, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, well, it's not not insignificant, and I've asked a lot of questions tonight, and I would appreciate some answers.
It's something the stormwater, Dave, if you can, I know you're looking at the final revisions that just came to you today. I think you've heard the concerns that they've expressed, and I would like you to make sure that what that the plan's gonna work. That guess it makes it sounds funny. Plan's gonna work. I'm encouraged that they're taking 22,000 square feet that are currently running under your street, square feet of area, and getting it down to 8, you said? 8,200 square feet.
How can
So
they tell that if they didn't test
14,000
my side
square
of the
foot
property?
reduction. What's that?
How can they tell that if they didn't test where the water comes out on my side? Just doesn't make any sense.
Because there's no what they're doing is kept going by how much volume of area that's collecting water and sending it to you. It's like if you have a big roof and a small gutter. What they're doing is they're basically reducing the size of the roof that's collecting for that storm drain. I do want to ask, has the DPW looked at the culvert and see if the culvert's in good shape?
It's, the DPW, I don't believe did, but DOT was, I did, and as Mr. McLaughlin noted, he spoke with DOT. I forwarded his concerns
Yep.
to DOT and encouraged them to go take a look and evaluate, because obviously that infrastructure should be evaluated, not only for Mr. McLaughlin's concerns,
But for the
but for the TIP project.
For the TIP project.
So that they're not paving over bad infrastructure.
Well, I'll be there
So
with.
it sounds like they're taking it seriously, and they met with him to discuss, but I guess have scheduled an appointment to actually be out there on the property.
And I would like to be out there for that, the February 28th, which you're going to, I have my email address here to give you.
Good.
And you're going to give us that time.
Should Santec be there that day?
Oh, what's it, what?
Should Santec be there that day as well? When you go onto Kevin's property?
Yeah, I mean, I can't believe the water study was done without taking my property into consideration. I'm gonna butter directly across the street.
What does the water study look at? It looks at the water on this property. I'm getting frustrated, so I'm starting to, what I don't understand, he's trying to take the amount of water from 28,000 square feet of water collecting and heading towards your property and reduce that to 8,000 something. Right? So cutting it by more than half.
And he's gonna put it in a pool and put it across the street.
But
from my
no,
house.
the stuff that goes into the pool, I don't understand how you're not understanding that.
I understand
it's
what you're
reducing it by the area by more than half.
I understand what you're saying, but I just don't understand how the studies that have been done are thorough and accurate with regards to the actual conditions of the property.
To the property that we're studying. Like, there's a lot of people here who have water issues. The ones that are uphill. This is gonna do nothing to help the people uphill of them. We said we could try to help the people downhill. You are downhill, and he's trying to cut the water by more than half. So I'm sorry that I drove a long distance. I was up in northern Maine. I drove down for this. Am I the only one who's not? Am I? He's trying to cut it. Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Chairman, one thing I just want to add so the board stays focused is
Yep.
really what this legal standard is. And that's the Massachusetts state standard, which is, and correct me if I'm wrong, peer review, Dave, is that the Mass stormwater management standards have been met. That's really the standard that we're looking at. And so the peer review has gone through and made sure that the applicant of the project meets Matt's stormwater management handbook standards. And that's really what the standard is here.
And that's not 1 more gallon of volume to an abutter's property, correct? Counsel?
Correct, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sir, I don't like comments like that. I'm trying to be very polite. We don't do that.
You asked what your recourse was, and I let you know. You still have private claims if you need them. Our permitting doesn't make anything okay.
Right. All right. Any other public question, comment? Because I every time, even if I'm frustrated, I've always made sure that everyone gets to ask and make the comment that they want. Is there anyone else that has a question tonight?
Could I ask one more civilized question?
Yes, sir.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, that's okay.
Are you sure?
Sure, yeah. I just need to-
Hello, my name is Chris Wolf. I'm at 25 Hazeltine Road. So I'm about the wetlands. I have a question too about the sediment basins. If you could show us on the map, this is new, right? This is something new that you're adding, the sediment basins you mentioned?
It was in the other plan.
No, it was in the.
Was it, okay, can you point them out to us on the maps, just so I have a clear, and
You
you
pull
said
it up,
it's
Mike?
gonna hold the water for another 72 hours? Again, I know, behind my house is very wet. I'm concerned with, all sorts of, again, mosquitoes. There's a lot of problem areas behind my house that I would like somebody possibly to look at too.
I will tell you, it is very wet back there.
It is very wet
This is
back
right,
there.
it's right across the street from me,
Mhm.
and that, when that 8 inches
Yeah.
of rain in the week.
Yeah, the whole thing was all water.
It's
and
wetland.
I do have, yes, so.
Okay, if you want to zoom in a little bit, and you want to put them out on the screen for her, he's got several of them.
You can go out. So we have one small one there, and then we have one here, and then so those are open, and then this is an underground basin,
Right.
so it's under the basement.
And you said it's gonna hold water for 72 hours?
That's that's stormwater management standard.
Standards, okay.
Yep, after 72 hours. We have to show, in my drainage calculations, you have to show that this drains within 72 hours. So these basins drain within around 25 hours, basically, between 25 and 35 hours.
Well, I'm just worried that it's gonna be adding even more water for that time period into the wetlands.
I'm not adding any more water.
I know you keep saying that, but it's sort of hard to visualize, so.
Thank you. Sir, you wanted to make one more quick question?
You probably noticed my inappropriate outburst earlier, for all of them. I guess the question is, I don't know if this is the way Kevin understands it, or the way I understand it. I guess the way it is, what I don't understand, if, let's say you have a pitcher of water here, and it's coming down a straight, that's how much water we have now. Well, let's just say you take that and you run it down 5 different things, same amount of water, okay, and you put it down in a catch basin, and as time goes by, they fill up, and they go down, it would seem like it's the same amount of water coming down, if not more, from a wider area. I mean, I don't know, am I explaining this right?
No,
I
I understand your point.
Okay, that was my
I
only
understand your point.
point of confusion more than anything else.
No, it's important to catch that water, hold it for a little bit, and then let it infiltrate back into the aquifer. You don't want it to surge all through at once. That'd be the worst thing. If you want a huge example of that, look at West Hill Dam. It's there to slow the water down in an emergency so that Woonsocket doesn't flood.
If that's the case, that would definitely help. Tremendous. That'd be nice.
Yeah. All right, gentlemen, I apologize for speaking so much. Do you guys have questions, concerns, comments? Because I'm not the board, I'm just chairman. You guys are the actual voting.
Yes.
I'm good. I had to say what I had to say.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Bob?
No, it's good, but I think, again, we're retaining the water, we're not adding to it, we're reducing the amount of how it's being looked at, and we're not collecting more. So, to me, nature does what she wants with the water. We're improving it with all of these activities. That's just how I see it. And just from living in town for a long time, many of these projects have gone in, where these additional draining systems have gone in, and to my remembrance, has improved them all. If you look at, by Valley Tech, all the houses that went in there, they had the same water issues. We have because that same water that comes down off 140 goes down behind Valley Tech and works its way down to the West River and on and beyond. And all of those being done correctly has improved all of that. So I really think that your work is going to improve the conditions. And again, if we're collecting and getting rid of 2/3 in a better situation, I think it's going to make it better. I don't see how it can make it worse by managing that water instead of just letting it go where Mother Nature wants to put it. It's going to improve. That's what I think. So it's my 2 cents, which is being on the board and being in town, seeing how the water flows and everywhere. Because I grew up on Mendon Street, which is where all that water comes down. And Peter, I think you used to have a river running through your house in the basement. I went into once many, many years ago, and you had that water issue then, so that hasn't changed. But I think stopping it, collecting it, draining it more appropriately is just helping Mother Nature's work. I think that's my opinion. What I've seen in town in 57 years.
I'm good.
You good?
Yep.
Fine. Okay, well, now I gotta ask the adults in the room, what items have we forgotten tonight?
So the next meeting is March 20th?
Yes.
March 20th, and we were planning on discussing civil engineering, and that will include fire department comments. And I believe we could probably also address, because of the civil, the landscaping, which was brought up a number of times tonight as well. So we can get a good look at the landscaping plan. So landscaping, which is civil, but civil generally, and fire comments.
Okay, do we have a final list of requests for waivers?
We did submit one, obviously, like through the process, they've changed, so we can definitely work on that. If you want to talk about waivers next meeting as well, we can get an updated list.
I just think we're running out of time. We're running out of time, so,
An updated waiver list now would be good. I tend to review the waiver list at the tail, very end of the
well,
public.
that's the second to last meeting.
Yeah.
So, doesn't get much more tail than that.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so updated final waiver list. Do we have to approve any previous minutes or anything like that?
You should continue this
Oh.
public hearing, if you're all done. Continue the public hearing to March 20th, 6:30.
6:30.
It's up in Community Center.
Motion.
Yeah, I'll move that we continue the hearing on the 40B application for 47 Main Street to March, sorry, what was the date?
20th.
March 20th. At
20th.
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 Yeah, 20th,
Okay.
at 6:30 p.m. Sorry.
I'll second it.
Okay, vote of the board.
Don Sperry, aye.
Bob Butler, aye.
Bill Andrews, aye.
David Russell, aye.
Okay, all right. So this part of the hearing is closed. We have some minutes we got to approve for January. January minutes. All right, let me just pull those up. Folks, thank you. Thank you for coming tonight, and thank you for commenting tonight. Because we can check out some of those things here.
Sure, I'll shoot you an email to.
Right there. Anything else, folks?
Yeah.
Sir, Bob, I'm going to look for you to make a motion.
Do you have email or just
Bill Andrews, aye. We are adjourned.